Hi everyone. My name is Morgana Angeli. I'm a senior at the International School of Brussels, and I'm one of the founders of Reset Revolution. So, Reset Revolution, as most of you know, it's a platform for students worldwide to connect and to learn from each other about social injustice happening worldwide, ranging from women's equality and racism, environmental issues, all these topics are covered through our platform. So this is actually the 5th interview we're doing. So I wanted to thank everyone, all 9 of you, joining us today, and thank you for your support throughout this journey. But more specifically, I want to thank Carlotta for joining us. So Tota is a senior at the Lincoln International School in Buenos Aires, and she's one of my oldest friends. We went to school together at Lincoln in 3rd grade, and we've stayed friends since then. So we're going to be discussing women's rights with topics ranging from personal experiences to abortion rights to the access women in Buenos Aires slums have to basic items such as menstrual hygiene products. So Tota, just to start us off, what has been your personal experience growing up as a woman in Buenos Aires? And also if you want to talk a little bit about yourself, and yeah.
Hi everyone. I'm Tota, as Morgana said. I'm very much consider myself like a feminist and a social rights activist. Growing up in Argentina my whole life, even though I'm not Argentine, has been like a beautiful experience because this country is my home, but it is also a country that like is very patriarchal, very like sexist in their culture, in their ways. Not to like bash on my Argentine friends here, but like I think they're aware of what I'm talking about. And so a lot of times I would catch myself like walking down the street and I would get catcalled. And from a really young age, like I think the first time I experienced catcalling, I was walking with my mom and I was like 10, and some guys on a motorbike like slowed down and yelled at my mom, and they were like, "Your daughter's so beautiful." And I don't know, it just obviously makes you super uncomfortable, makes you feel like you're not safe at all, even though I was with my mom. And then I remember another time I was walking to French classes, and you have to walk down like this big street that has a lot of cars. Well, I know all streets have a lot of cars, but like it's a main road in Buenos Aires. And there was these workers that started catcalling me, and I looked at them because like I wanted to see what they were saying, who they were, and they continued, and they started following me. And I was walking alone, and I think I was in 9th grade, so I was like 15. And it was probably one of the scariest moments of my life. Like I got to French class and I started crying because I had never felt so unsafe in my life. And I had called people and no one was answering me. So like being a woman in Argentina, it's risky like to go out on the street sometimes. I see all the time on Instagram stories, like, be careful, there's this van with this license plate that's going around and like trying to kidnap women, like please be safe, ladies. Or the fact that like on March 8th, I went to the Women's March, and on the way home I was taking the train and I felt unsafe. And so it was ironic to me the fact that I had to share my like location with my mom, saying just in case, I sent it to her with that message, because honestly like it's so unpredictable. You never know like what could happen. And I'm thankfully like those are the worst experiences that like I've had, but women have had way worse. Like I think a woman gets killed in Argentina like every 3 minutes, like something really horrible like that. Femicides are a huge issue here. Another time, sorry, I'm like telling all my personal stories. Another time, my friends and I, and like she's in this life, we were at school, and our school has like a balcony and it gives off to the street, like you can see the streets. And we were eating lunch, like chilling, laughing, and all of a sudden we looked to the street because there's a car parked, and we're like, what is this car doing? We looked to the street, and in the car was a guy jacking off, making direct eye contact with my friend and I. And like we were in our, she like put in the chat, remember the balcony? Yeah, we were in our school, our like not like safe space, but like our school. And that was so uncomfortable. And I remember looking at her and I couldn't believe what had just happened to me, to her. And it was just a very weird experience, made me very uncomfortable at Lincoln. So that kind of gives you a little bit of insight as to what it's like to live as a woman in Argentina.
Yeah, and that's really interesting with all you're saying. That's obviously I only lived there 1 year and I was 8. And since moving to Belgium, I think there are those recurrent themes of having to share your location, feeling unsafe, but it never goes to obviously the big extent that you just explained, at least personally for me. Obviously, everyone has their own experience, but I think it's crazy how still today, like, we have to text each other when we get home. We have to share our location when we're in the metro. We have to do all these things. It's insane. Yeah, it's just, it makes me kind of uncomfortable with the way our world is going. So you were talking about the Women's March. The Women's March was for free and legal abortion, right?
Kind of all mixed. The Women's March on March 8th was to like celebrate Women's Day, not celebrate, but like commemorate Women's Day. And so that, like, there's a lot of different people, different acts in a way. There's a lot of, in Argentina, there's a lot of different bandanas that represent different things. And of course, like in these women marches, the like group of abortion women or women with their abortion bandanas are also very present. And there has been a numerous amount of abortion, like marches for legal abortion in Argentina that have been massive, because that's still, for people who don't know, like abortion is still legal in Argentina. In most of Latin America, I think it's only legal in Uruguay, Guyana, and another place that I cannot remember. So only 3 countries in Latin America have like legal abortion in all cases. Others have really restrictive abortion laws, like not even in the case of rape, not even in the case that the mother's health is in danger. And in Argentina, it's in the case of rape, you're allowed to seek an abortion, but the justice system in Argentina is not the best. And so you have to ask, and then it has to go to court, and then they have to legally declare that you were raped, and then they have to do all this thing, like all this paperwork and stuff, that by the time no one wants to, like by the time you're done, no one wants to perform the abortion. And so that leads to, sorry, I kind of like bled into the next topic, but that leads to that leads to a lot of women having to seek unsafe ways of getting abortions because they don't have the health care.
Yeah, and speaking about not having access to proper healthcare, Argentina, or better, Buenos Aires, where you're living, there's the slums, the slums, the villas, and how do women in the villas get access to these basic health needs, like access to menstrual hygiene products, or in their cases, not even legal abortion, but just safe healthcare, female.
So, of course, to anyone who like follows Argentine politics or economics, the inflation here is very high. Prices go up a lot, prices change a lot. So you can imagine that access to menstrual hygiene products is expensive. And if you're not making that money, if you're in a situation where you don't have that money, it is very hard. Another huge thing here as well is sex ed that like doesn't really get taught to people. I remember my mom actually works in the slums of Argentina with her foundation. She works with kids. And I remember one day I was talking to this mom who was, I think, like 20 and already had 2 kids. And I was talking to her about, like, basically the first one, like, she wasn't planned, and she didn't want it, and she was forced to have it. And I was talking to her about how she was educating her sister on, like, condoms, how to use condoms, how to be safe, because that didn't get taught to her, and that led her to the situation that she was in today, which of course, like, she loves her kids and everything, but she's also not in an economic position to be bringing up 2 kids. And so she was taking on the role of teaching her younger sister everything you need to know about like sex ed, because that the government and the education system failed them in that sense. People know condoms and that's it. They don't know the variety of contraception that you can take, and it's also expensive. Condoms are so expensive here. They're put in a like glass case so that it's hard to get them, like so that no one steals them. I mean, so it's just a mess, and women struggle to have menstrual hygiene products. And I was gonna start a like not partnership but like a project with Organic Cup, that they're a menstrual cup like company, and I think they're based in like the Netherlands or something. And I emailed them at last year in August, and they were super interested in coming, like in being able to like distribute menstrual cups in Argentina, because of course it's way easier to just reuse a menstrual cup. But even then, like there's questions about how well they can sanitize it, because access to running water isn't always available to everyone. Access to soap isn't always available to everyone. But because due to like COVID and everything, that project like kind of died out. But hopefully it'll come back, or someone will pick it up. Yeah.
How would you suggest that people locally can help women? So I don't know, there's some projects that are like, every time you buy your own sanitary products, buy an extra pack and give it to a homeless woman on the streets, or donate it to a refugee center. What would you suggest people could do to help with these things?
Yeah, definitely that. I know that Girl Up, which is the group that I like joined the account, the live with, is planning to do a menstrual products drive, and collect all sorts of things to be able to distribute to these women. So I think that if you have access, like someone who goes into the poor areas, who works with people there, maybe a foundation, definitely like do what you can to help. Also advocating for these people who can't advocate for themselves is really important too, because like having conversations like these is how you understand and how you spread information regarding like important issues.
Yeah. I think the sexual education thing is also appalling. It also happened in the States. A lot of people are saying that they're not receiving proper like sex ed. And in a lot of countries, for example, Italy, I know that in public schools, you just don't get, it's not something you get taught. And the repercussions it has, it's insane. Like, because it's one thing not making abortion legal and making sex education legal or available, but it's something else like making sex education unavailable and abortions illegal.
And that's the thing, like the abortion law that's being presented right now in Congress includes educación sexual integral, which means like inclusive sexual education, basically. And that's another reason why abortion activists and women's rights activists and feminists are pushing so hard for this bill to get passed, which has been presented numerous times in Argentina's Congress and has gotten rejected. It's because it's not just legalizing abortion, it's also bringing with it sexual education, so that these people have the tools to be able to make reasonable decisions about what they want to do, and how they feel that they need to cope with pregnancy or whatever, childbirth.
That's interesting. When you say inclusive sexual education, does that mean inclusive to all sexualities and genders? So it would be informing men, for example, of AIDS and such diseases that they could contract? Or do you think, might not know, but I mean, like, what do you think?
I think I actually translated the word wrong.
Integral, even that.
The word bilingual things. Integral, like it's, I don't know how you would say it in English. I think it's more on, I don't think it's really on the basis of like,
yeah,
making it inclusive for like all different sexualities, gender identities. I think it's more of like making it for everyone to have at least a basis of sex ed, like around Argentina. Sorry for that.
It's okay. Does anyone watching, does anyone have any questions watching the live? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we covered it mostly.
I brought my abortion bandana to show everyone. That's what it looks like. It's a little ratchet because it's tied on my bag. So, but that's what it looks like. And it says sexual education to decide, anti-contraceptives to like not abort, and then abortion to not die. Pretty catchy phrase.
We have a question, and it's, does your school know that these type of things are happening? And to add on to that, what is it doing, if it does know?
Tough question, honestly. Pretty. The school knows about certain like things that have happened with people at our school that were definitely not okay. A lot of like sexist comments and racist comments and homophobic comments get kind of thrown under the bus at our school when we were in person, because we're not in person right now. When we were in person, the amount of times that I would hear classmates saying sexist things, and it was just like teachers would overhear and just wouldn't say anything about it. I think now they're like kind of trying to ramp it up and like be more like notice or like say things, sensitivity training. I know they're also doing that, but like the school doesn't, I wouldn't say the school does much, but I also don't want to like bash my school. But my personal opinion, I think there's a lot more that they could be doing that they're definitely not doing. And they don't hold conversations about things that are really important. So no, to answer your question, I don't think the school's doing a lot.
Is there
like suspended?
What?
Watch me get like suspended for saying that.
Is there any way to help from abroad? Someone is asking.
I think in terms of like women's rights, there is a lot you can do, because I feel like every time I see Argentina in the news, I'm like, oh my God, we're on BBC. Like no one ever reads about Argentina. So I think definitely like spreading information about femicides, because all of these women are victims and they like their voices go unheard and no one knows their names. And I think that's absolutely horrible. So definitely, I have a big theory about education and spreading information. I think that's a huge way that you can bring about change. I think when people are educated and like understand systems of oppression, then like we'll get somewhere as a society. And so I think that like by educating your friends or saying, hey, like I read this really interesting article about like the legalization of abortion, like why don't you read this? It's about Argentina. And then just like that, it's like a little trickle, and hopefully someone will. Does that make sense, my answer?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just like spreading information, talking about it, bringing awareness to issues that are present here. There's tons others that don't only like not only have to do with women's rights.
Yeah, I actually saw a video on Facebook a few weeks ago, and it's a protest that started in Peru, I think, and it's against violence against women. And different women in different Latin American countries repeated the same song. I'll send you the link later, and I'll post it on the account's story. Have you seen it?
Yeah, it actually started in Chile.
Oh, Chile. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's called A Rapist in Your Path, in Our Path. And it went like worldwide, that song.
Yeah, it came to Belgium too.
Yeah, I get goosebumps every time I hear it. I'm like, wow, the power that these women, like, just, I don't know, there's something about seeing protests that just like gets to me. I love it. I'm like, yes, rebel. Yeah, that was a really sensational song, and they performed it in Argentina at one of the abortion marches. They actually didn't for the women's march, because I remember like hoping that I would see them like perform it. They didn't, but they did at the, like I saw video footage of the abortion march.
Yeah, for everyone watching, if you haven't seen this video, it's basically women around Latin America, France, Belgium, UK, it's everywhere around the world, and they're chanting the same song, and it's basically saying how there's a rapist in your path, and it's part of the government, it's part of the politics, it's part of the economy, it's part of everything. It's like a structural blindness that is happening, and it's just a really powerful thing, because you see women in Belgium are doing it in French, women in there's people doing it in English, people doing it in Spanish, and it's the same message over and over, and it's just really powerful. And then there's something that they do, and after every point they make, they like put their hands behind their head and they squat, because that's the position that women have to take when they're being arrested, in South America, I think. I don't think it's like that here. But yeah, if you haven't watched this, it's a rapist in your path. You should definitely watch the video. Another question is, I thought Argentina was one of South America's wealthier countries. Is it possibly worse in other nations of South America?
For sure. Like, I think every nation's battling with it's just Latin America as a whole is very, like, sexist in its, like I said this earlier, very sexist in its culture, very patriarchal. I think, of course, like with the new generation, we're moving away from that kind of stuff, and that's definitely happening here too. But there's still, like, the older generation, there's still subtle things that get said that you're like, oh, that's very sexist, or like stuff like that. Sorry, side note. The other day I went to someone's house and I asked them what their parents did, and they told me that their dad worked so-and-so, and they're like, my mom is just kind of like our extra maid. And I was like, cool. So things like that kind of catch you off guard. And so, sorry, what was the question again?
The question, it was, do you think it's worse in other Latin American countries?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for all Latin American countries, but I do think that there's somewhere definitely higher femicide, sorry, my voice cracked, definitely higher femicide rates, definitely less access to abortion, less just, yeah, for sure.
There's a town in Mexico, I forgot the name, but it's a town where a lot of women have disappeared in the past 10 years. And it's called the town where women disappear. And it's like every day there's one or two new women disappeared, found dead. And it's really like a horrible thing to read about. To answer Vincent's question, yeah, that's the chant, El violador es tú. And then if you want to expand on what femicide is?
So femicide is the killing of women. It's like a hate crime, basically, just based on their gender, and it's like the intentional killing of these people. I didn't realize that people might have not known what that was, sorry. It's a very present thing here. It's very also structural. It's systemic, like women get killed systematically here, and it's really sad, honestly, because you'll see in the media women that get buried in the back of people's gardens, or that they turn up in like plastic bags dead and having been raped. And then don't ask me about the justice, because there's not a lot of justice for these women. And there's a few like really big cases that have happened that are also just, I don't know, it's just really sad. So yeah, to answer your question, femicide is just the intentional killing of women. Yeah. Argentina has a very high femicide rates. My friend actually did her GLOPO HL extension presentation on femicides in Argentina. And we have, a high rates.
Yeah. I don't know, I keep connecting it back to what I could know or in Europe, but for all the Europeans watching, it's not only restricted to Argentina, but femicide is actually, for example, in Italy, it's femminicidio, and it happens a lot within couples. So usually there's a lot of husbands killing their wives. I think it's one of the highest in Europe. So we, like Vincent earlier asked, how can we help from abroad, but it's not only helping from abroad, but helping within your own country, because maybe you're just overlooking that the issue, but there definitely are problems in Europe, in North America, in China, in Russia, in Argentina. So it's being able to look at your surroundings and notice that there are issues within your surroundings, and not always wanting to help abroad, but sometimes wanting to help locally.
100%. I totally agree. And I know that with quarantine, there's also been such a rise worldwide with domestic abuse cases, domestic calls to domestic abuse hotlines, women getting. So what happened in Argentina was that they let out and back at the beginning of quarantine, because we're kind of still in quarantine for you Europeans. And they let out a lot of people that were in jail and that had been convicted for certain things. They let them out of jail out of fear, they would catch COVID. And so they sent them home. So a lot of people had to spend quarantine with their past aggressors, or with, people who had a husband who had beat his wife and kids, that kind of stuff. So there's definitely, quarantine was hard for a lot of people, and for various different reasons. But I think that's one that we might have not really thought about much, is the fact that a lot of people were stuck at home in situations of abuse.
Yeah, and that's another one of the downsides of the lockdown, is not only for women, but also for people that are just stuck in bad home environments, that it was perpetuated through the quarantine. Yeah, does anyone else have any other questions? Or Tota, do you have anything else to add?
No. I mean, I feel like we kind of touched on it all. Hopefully, the president just sent a bill to Congress for abortion. So he's behind the bill. So hopefully it'll get passed. It has to go to Congress, and then it has to get, if it passes Congress, then it has to go to the Senate and get voted in the Senate. But hopefully 2021 will be the year.
Yeah, let's hope so. There's another question, and it's that there's a hand signal for people to use on video call to notify others that they're in danger of domestic violence. Are there any that are known and used in Argentina that you know
of? Not that I know of. I think that a lot of also domestic abuse happens in people of less economic situations, and so a lot of that being on a video call is not something that's very present in their day-to-day. A lot of these people also didn't have weren't able to stay home. They weren't able to not work for 8 months. So honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I do know there's obviously hotlines that they were spreading all over social media. If you're caught in a situation where you are suffering domestic abuse, call this line and we'll help you. There's also this is something personal, but whenever I see a woman on the street walking and there's this green bandana, there's also the purple bandana that is Ni Una Menos, which is not one less, the feminist movement. That immediately makes me feel safe. I know that if I was caught in a situation where I didn't feel comfortable, I would feel okay going to that person and being hey, could I chill with you for a sec? And so that's kind of and I wear mine for that exact purpose, because I feel if I'm not very strong, but if anyone's in a situation where they might feel uncomfortable, I'm here for you,
Yeah, that's a nice support system. With all the bad, you can also look at the good, And
definitely. Being a woman is hard, definitely. But when you see the way worldwide we all stick together, the way girls supporting girls, the way just the movements of thousands of women coming together on the street and screaming at the top of their lungs, that's something beautiful to be a part of. That makes me just my heart warm. And I'm like, for that, like, I'm happy to be a woman. Like, for those reasons, to be able to fight for all of you around the world, like, that brings me joy. And I know that everyone has different, like, privileges, different like situations that lead to them experiencing womanhood differently, but 100%, like, moments like that when we all come together is something very special that I think, like, not a lot of people can experience.
Yeah. And you've created an account with other friends of yours at school, Girl Up, which is what you're joining the live with us today. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with that? And yeah.
So Girl Up is a branch from the UN, sort of like Model United Nations, and it is basically to, as it says in the name, uplift women, which actually surprisingly brought a lot of controversy at our school. People asking why it wasn't Boy Up, which, yeah, anyways, side notes. But it's basically an organization, and they're very, like, open in the sense that you make your club and they let you, like, manage it the way you want to manage it. So my friend and I, we brought it to Lincoln over the summer. Like, we just kind of, like, thought about it. We were talking, and then we're like, yeah, why don't we just, like, see if people join? And actually a lot of people joined. So we basically, it's also really hard right now in quarantine. We're not seeing each other, so it's all happening over Zoom. But we're organizing, like, events to talk about issues that, like, that everyone faces. We did a presentation to our school on body image last Tuesday, and it went really well. I was really proud of all the girls that spoke, and I got a lot of, like, positive feedback from the teachers. I don't know if the students, but, like, I think it's important to speak about important issues, even if no one listens. Like, at least you know that you tried. So we're doing that. We basically, our aim is just to talk about very, like, important issues that women face today, and kind of just, like, break stigmas and stuff like that. It's a really cool group. The women are phenomenal.
Would you suggest that other international schools try doing the same? And
for sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's also easy because it's not like they don't, like, the Girl Up, like, big head, whatever, doesn't regulate, isn't like you have to do this, this, and this. So you can take it and apply it. So let's say at our school, we noticed that, like, maybe consent wasn't so touched upon. And so we were able to, like, make posts about it or talk about it within our group. Or we noticed that, like, in sex ed, female masturbation and female orgasms wasn't touched upon. And so we very briefly touched on that as a group. But then it was also, like, educating ourselves on, like, what it is to be an intersectional feminist, what it is to, like, what trans exclusionary feminism is, why it's so harmful, like, different things like that. And we just, yeah, it's a good place to talk about issues and also, like, educate your community around you about important issues that women face.
Yeah, I actually joined one of their meetings one day, and they were talking about eating disorders and recovery from these and the causes and consequences that they have. And I thought it was really, really powerful. So if you're a student or a teacher, one of the 12 people watching today, or someone watching the recorded video later on, if you have the ability to do this, maybe you can contact Girl Up, this account that Tota just joined with, and maybe ask her on some tips on how you guys can do it in your own school, or for some guidance, because I think it's something really powerful that should happen in schools, because some schools just overlook some of these topics.
For sure. A lot of schools overlook important topics.
Yeah. So if no one has any other questions, we've talked for 40 minutes now. Does anyone have any other questions before we wrap it up? Okay. So I wanted to thank everyone watching, and I want to thank Tota for taking the time and you know, being here, even though it's early for her. And I just want to tell you guys about our next live. It's going to be happening on Wednesday, and the topic is still undecided, but it will be interesting, so you best tune in and watch it. Thank you so much for being here. Bye bye.
Thank you.